Hello, and welcome back to This Book Exists. I'm Adam Holwerda, and this time we're going to be talking about Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? This is the book that Blade Runner, the Harrison Ford movie, is based off of. And I would say it's like loosely based off of it, but I did just watch the Blade Runner movie for the first time after reading the book. I didn't want to go the other direction of seeing the movie first and then reading the book. A lot of the movie actually does fit into this book. If I was Philip K. Dick and I saw the movie after this being the book, I would be fairly pleased. Most of the things from a movie perspective got into the book. I'm making this video so I remember what the book was about. The book and the movie are going to meld together in my brain. Maybe this will be a useful video for everyone who liked the book but forgot about a bunch of the parts of it that were interesting or cool or that didn't make it into the film visually or in a plot way. So let's talk about it. This book takes place in 2021. It's after a world war called World War Terminus that appears to be a nuclear world war and has basically made it so that most of the animals and humans are either dead or have left the planet. So everything is now covered with a thin layer of radioactive dust. On the news, you might hear a weather report that talks about when the most potent fallout is going to be. They'll be like, the worst fallout's going to be around noon, so maybe take care. People are buying some like lead cod pieces off the internet to shield their junk from the radioactivity. The dust that exists now, it's still potent and radioactive, but it's not like killing people as much. It's just deranging people and then giving people genetic mutations. There's a government, and it appears to be like the government appears to be the UN. It seems so. Maybe that's a world government. Although there is a new America, a settlement called New America that is about 5 years old at this point. That is a United States colony on Mars, and the sun doesn't really shine on the Earth anymore. So this World War Terminus has really made the Earth kind of uninhabitable or not uninhabitable or a little bit less nice to live on the planet. Although it seems as though certain trappings of modern life, such as capitalism, industry, products and ads and jobs, like people have jobs, they just might look a little different now. This is our backdrop. There's also this idea of androids, and androids are synthetic people, and they've gotten pretty good at this point. They've gotten almost so good that you can't figure out if they're human or not. So think about like how AI is so good now that if a picture has been made by Nano Banana Pro or something, it's almost impossible for you to figure out if that was an AI photo or not. You need some like actual verification tool to figure that out. And so this book is irrelevant right now because in the book, there's people who are trained in certain ways to determine whether or not someone is an android. Those people are bounty hunters. They work at the police station, etc. That's their job. It's not that androids are illegal. It's just that certain androids have done some stuff, and those are the ones that need to be cleaned up from the book's perspective. If you emigrate off of Earth and go to a colony on Mars, for example, the government will give you your own android, and it's going to fight for you on your behalf in this new environment. It's going to build stuff for you. It's going to do all the things you are going to be unable to do with your physical human body because you're just a weakling compared to an android. The radio ad would be like, yeah, hearkening back to the days of the pre-Civil War. So they're actually like trying to get you to think of these robots as slaves that you could have. That's the backdrop. And our main character's name is Rick Deckard, and he lives in San Francisco with his wife, Ron Deckard. She's very critical of him and his job. She doesn't really like that he's a bounty hunter. She calls him a killer, even though he's I don't kill people. I don't kill anyone who's like a human. And she's just those poor Andys. She has empathy for these androids that he kills. And this becomes a central question for Rick in the book. Are the people that he's killing who are not people, are they people, essentially? Are the androids people? And is it okay under his religion, which is Mercerism, to become a bounty hunter and be a bounty hunter? So he starts to think that maybe it's not okay towards the end of the book, and then he has to be somewhat even just told directly that it's okay and that he must do it. But we'll get into that. The book starts with him and his wife. They're at home and they're talking about their moods and how she doesn't feel as good as she wants to. And he's like trying to help and solve the issue. And it turns out they have this thing called a Penfield automated brain stimulator. They have this thing called a Penfield artificial brain stimulator, which allows you to dial different numbers and it will make you feel different feelings or moods, or it just basically stimulates your brain in an artificial way. For example, you can dial 104 if you want to forget whatever it is that you have scheduled for today. You could dial 888 to have the desire to want to watch television no matter what is on. You can dial 3 to have the desire to want to dial numbers. You can, for example, there's just all these different mood modulators that they use in this universe, which it made me think at this point in the book, because it's just the first chapter, right? It made me think that this was going to be a plot device being used throughout the book, that there would be times where they're dialing different numbers, or he's using the Penfield to dial a certain mood in for when he needs to focus or when he needs to feel a certain way about something later on in the book. But that doesn't really happen. I'm wondering if it's because the entire book happens in one workday of Rick Deckard's life, that maybe this artificial brain stimulator thing is just something that he has at home, and it's maybe too big to bring anywhere else and is not like a portable item that he can use throughout the story. Okay, so the other big part of the book is that there are animals in this world, real animals and artificial animals. And it's a status symbol to own a real animal. If you can own a real animal, you are seen as just an enviable upper class person in society. Rick thinks that a lot of his neighbors have real animals. He has, for example, a neighbor who has a horse, and the horse is pregnant, and he's trying to get that neighbor to give him a colt for basically for free. Just, if your horse gets pregnant and has a colt, will you give it to me? And the neighbor's like, why would I do that? That doesn't really make sense. Besides, you have a sheep already. And what the neighbors don't know is that the sheep is artificial. And this is a source of shame for Rick and Iran. They have this sheep as a status symbol, but it's a fake sheep. And that doesn't mean that it didn't cost a lot of money, because you still have to buy these animals from an artificial pet store that will have payment plans for this artificial animal that you must essentially spend a lot of money on, whether it's real or not. Obviously, the real animals cost a lot more, and we'll learn about that also. He goes upstairs after talking to his wife and how she's in a bad mood and she can't figure out what to dial and she doesn't know how to feel. So he ends up dialing a number for both of them so that they feel a certain way. Then he goes up to the roof where his sheep is, and he's like hanging out with his sheep. That's where the conversation he has with his neighbor about the horse happens. This seems to be his driving force in the book. How does he afford a real animal? It would make him so happy if he could just have a real animal. All the things that happen with the android, with his job, with what he's trying to do, what he's thinking about Mercerism, it's background noise. What really matters to him is owning an animal. Like, he would really just love to have a real animal. He's a bounty hunter at a police station in San Francisco, and he works out of the Justice Building, or the Hall of Justice. I don't know if it's called that. I don't know if it's called Hall of Justice. that feels DC leaning, perhaps. His obsession with animals comes up in multiple ways. He's on his way to work and he stops at a pet store and he's looking at this artificial ostrich in the window and he's, what if I owned like this artificial ostrich? Maybe people would think this thing is real. It's not that anything bad has happened to his sheep. He just has, at this point, exposed himself to his neighbor by showing his neighbor that his sheep was artificial. And this was a ploy to get the neighbor to feel bad for him so that he would give him a colt, which would be like one of his horses, if the horse reproduced, essentially. This is his driving force. He's thinking about this ostrich. Maybe I get this new animal because now I've told my neighbor that my sheep is fake. He goes to work. He gets called into his boss's office and they're like, hey, we need to talk about what happened to Dave Holden, one of your colleagues. And Rick is like, okay, sure, what happened? Dave Holden's in the hospital and he's going to be in the hospital for a month. And it's because there was these 8 androids that escaped from Mars, or from a colony, essentially. And remember, these androids are like, so they're like, okay, what happened is that Dave is in the hospital, and it's because these eight androids that have escaped essentially from a colony on Mars or elsewhere. They're here on Earth. They're in San Francisco, and Dave was trying to figure out if they were human or not. And one of them, named Polikov, a Soviet police officer, has shot him. And the weapons in this book are laser tubes. They're not guns necessarily. Androids are not allowed to have laser tubes, but Polikov, this guy who is posing as a Soviet police officer, shot Dave Holden with a laser tube after he was being interrogated with the Voigt-Kampff test. We don't see any of this happen. This has already happened, and Rick's just being told about it. So he basically is like, okay, cool. I guess that means I'm now the one who has to retire the next 6 of these androids. Like, that shouldn't be too hard. His boss, Harry Bryant, is like, hold on a minute. It's not going to be that easy because these are the new Nexus 6 androids. And Rick's like, it's fine. I'm sure the Voigt-Kampff test is going to determine whether or not they have empathy, and I'll just continue to figure it out. The boss is like, cool, this is your job now. You're on the case. Rick's like, he doesn't want to do this, but he's like, what if I just get it all done in one day? Per android, he gets $1,000. And so he's thinking, what type of animal could I get if I had this much money? Like, he's just thinking about animals. He goes back to his office. He starts to research what he should do, how to take care of these androids. But he gets distracted by the fact that he still wants animals. So he calls up the pet shop and he asks them how much the ostrich is in the window that he saw that was like the artificial ostrich. How much would a payment plan be? And like, could he afford it? And it turns out he doesn't really have enough money for this ostrich. So he gives up on that thought. And he's like, I guess I should go try to kill some of these androids because that'll get me some money. At this point, we should bring up another character named John Isidore. John Isidore is one of these people who's got a slight genetic mutation based off of the dust. He's what's called a special. He's a special called a Chickenhead. John Isidore lives in an apartment building alone and feels fine about that. He goes to work and he has a stutter. He fixes broken artificial animals for a job. He's got a sick cat that he picks up from a client. And the sick cat is an artificial cat that has something wrong with it, right? And what's wrong with it is that it just seems to be dying or something. So he tries to open it up and he can't figure out how to open it up, but it turns out that the cat was like alive, like a real living cat, and what he did was kill it. So he gets to work and his boss is like, oh my god, you killed the client's actual animal, and I'm gonna make you call this person who you killed their animal. And his boss is really mean to this character. You start to feel bad for John Isidore. He's this simple guy being treated poorly and just a sad sack sort of character. Not meant to be smart. He's someone in the book that things happen to versus makes things happen. So we have these two threads happening of the same day of Rick Deckard trying to take down these androids that he's learned about so that he can buy an animal. And then at the same time, there's John Isidore, this guy who's accidentally killed an animal and just wants friends. He just wants people to like him. That's the only thing he really wants. He goes home after this whole thing at work, and he notices that there's somebody else in the building, and he can feel them. One thing I have not gotten into yet is the empathy box. The empathy box is like a Scientology machine. You put your hands on the 2 metal bars and it measures your thetans or whatever to determine how much money you have to spend to get to the next level of Scientology. That's what's happening. Although in this book, the religion is called Mercerism, and it's based on this guy named Wilbur Mercer. And Wilbur Mercer is some person from history that exists in the empathy box. One main practice of being a Mercerite is you fuse with Mercer on a daily basis or whenever you can. You will put your hands on this empathy box, and then it's like a virtual reality or like full body, out of body experience where you're now Mercer and you are climbing this like pile of like dead bones and Kipple, and people are throwing rocks at you while you're doing it. While you're in this state where you're fused with Mercer, you have his memories. You can remember being a kid who was brought up by Frank and Cora Mercer, and you remember that as a kid you had this ability to like bring animals back to life until the local government noticed that you were bringing animals back to life and decided when you were 16 that you were no longer allowed to bring animals back to life. They targeted your brain with a radioactive cobalt nodule, and now it seems like you're in this world of bones and death, and you're climbing out of it. People are throwing rocks at you, and sometimes a rock will hit you. When a rock hits you, the damage is done to you in the real world. So it is like the Matrix in a way. This is like a little bit of, you put your hands on the handles, you get jacked into a specific matrix where you're reliving a certain person's life with their memories and their identity, and you're climbing some pile of stuff and people are throwing rocks at you. So when you disengage from the empathy box, now you have this feeling of being somebody else. You were somebody else for a little bit. And you have to remember that, oh, being myself is just something that happens when I'm not touching the empathy box. And it's not necessarily like my identity is always, but it's like sometimes. And there are other experiences to have, and there's other people to be, and there's other ways to exist. This is Mercerism is the religion that a lot of the characters in the book have. There is, like, John Isidore is also a Mercerite. Iran and Rick Deckard are both Mercerites, and then other people in the book. It's maybe not the main religion, but it is a religion in the book practiced by some of the characters. How does Deckard start his trying to track down some androids? He starts by going to the Rosen Corporation, and that is a place that makes some of the androids. It makes the androids that he's trying to track down, the Nexus 6 androids. So he's going to go there and try to see anything that helps him figure out where the androids are. He goes there and he's waiting for his meeting with Eldon Rosen, the head honcho over there, and he's talking to somebody about the animals. That they have an owl there, and is that owl, like, how much is that owl? I haven't seen an owl. Is it artificial? And they're like, yeah, it's artificial. And he's pulling out his Sydney's catalog, which he has with him all the time. He's checking on animal prices to see how much they are worth. What's the market price for a boa constrictor? He ends up talking to Eldon Rosen and Rachel Rosen at Rosen Corporation, and he does the Voigt-Kampff test on her. He'll set up a machine to watch their retinal dilation and their heart rate and all these indicators of their responses to certain questions. The questions are like, you become pregnant, Rick continued, by a man who has promised to marry you. The man goes off with another woman, your best friend. You get an abortion, and I would never get an abortion, Rachel said. Anyhow, you can't. It's a life sentence, and the police are always watching. This time, both needles swung violently into the red. Okay, so he's like watching indicators of what happens when he asks certain questions. And when she doesn't respond enough, he's okay, I think she's an android. Which is interesting, right? Because what they talk about in the book is like a flattening of affect. So people on the spectrum of autism, for example, might, in this example, they might pop up as being androids. Another sort of like subtext of this whole thing is that, is there a way to determine if someone's like human enough based on some social construction of what normalcy is? So eventually, like, Rick has asked enough questions where he's pretty sure this person's an android, and the Eldon Rosen character kind of confirms that, yeah, she's an android, and she might expect it a little bit or know about it a little bit. And so he's like, okay, that's weird. And he leaves. And then we're back with John Isidore. Isidore, at this point, knows there's somebody in his building, and he is going to go visit them. He brings a little bit of food or something to the door and says, hello, I'm John Isidore. I live in this building. And there's a young woman there, and it looks like she has no furniture or anything. He doesn't really see anything in her apartment aside from Kipple. Kipple is this concept of continually growing bits of matter that eventually become everything. Little bits of shreds of paper or plastic or metal covered in radioactive dust, and it just accumulates. He has this idea that eventually everything is going to be Kipple, tending towards entropy. All the things in the earth that are ordered will become disordered, and everything will become Kipple, and nothing and nobody will remain after this. No thoughts, no record of anything that has come before, because everything will be Kippleized. And that's a pretty potent thought that he has. That's what he's thinking about mostly, is Kipple. Also, he just wants friends, and he just wants people to like him. And so he meets this Pris person. Her name's Pris Stratton, this woman in this room. She has no furniture, and he's like, hey, like, I will hang out with you or whatever. And she's like, I don't really want to hang out with you. She really doesn't like the fact that he's a chickenhead. He's, I guess, not good enough for her to hang out. We're clued into the fact right away that she might be artificial, because John Isidore thinks that she is Rachel Rosen from the Rosen industry. She looks exactly like her, and it turns out that they are the same sort of android. At this point, I gotta mention Buster Friendly. Buster Friendly is a character on television who has a TV show, and he's always interviewing somebody for hours and hours and hours. This guy is like the Energizer Bunny. He's just like continually interviewing people. Everyone loves Buster Friendly. Buster Friendly reminded me of like the ventriloquist dummy TV show Howdy Doody, where the host is a ventriloquist dummy and his partner. It does play into what happens in the book, because later on Buster Friendly becomes important. We get the sense throughout this book, at least I did, that Rick is not very good at his job. He's not a good bounty hunter. He is really more interested in these animals that he could own or not own. He's not the best at his job. Dave Holden, the guy who got shot, was probably the better player. Rick Deckard's your B league guy. He's not really the guy you want going to solve the android problem that you have. It's Homer Simpson up against highly technological androids. He's just stumbling into the answers, not really doing a whole lot on his own. Another bounty hunter kills a bunch of the androids. Towards the end of the book, he still needs help to kill the last androids. Rick basically gets help by this religious figure. Mercer at that point is making himself known to Rick outside of the empathy box, just like, dude, there's an android that's going to kill you on the stairs behind you. That was a big part of the book that doesn't get into the movie. This guy is just a buffoon, and he's only worried about his animals that he can get. And even after he's killed a few of the androids, he uses the $3,000 to go into debt to buy a goat. So they buy a Nubian goat, and that goes up on the roof, and he talks to his wife Iran about it, and he's like, this goat we're in debt now, but at least it makes us feel better. And his wife's, yeah, I feel better now that we have this goat, even though, yeah, we're really in debt. Seems bad. And he's like, it's fine. After Polakov has been killed, he goes after the next target on the list, who is a singer named Luba Luft. He goes to where she's singing. She's like a singer at a club or something. And he goes there and he's noticing all the people are ready for the concert. He's like, okay, I'm just going to kill her before the concert. That would seem like a good thing to do, because then I could just get it done now. I know she's probably in her dressing room. He goes back there and he goes to her dressing room and he finds this Luba Luft character. He starts asking her the Voigt-Kampff questions. Similarly to Rachel, she is not answering the questions in a way that helps. Like, she's answering him in a very off-the-wall, aloof way where he can't really get a solid read on what she's saying or how she's answering. He can't really figure out if she's really an android or not. And then she turns the tables on him by saying, maybe you're an android and you should take the test too. And there's nobody here who could administer the test to me. And then she says, hey, you know what? Actually, some of these questions are pretty creepy and you're like sexually harassing me or something. And so I'm going to call the cops on you. And that's the best thing you could do, because the cops are all on my side and they're going to know. So he was pretty optimistic that her calling the cops would be in his favor, but it's not in his favor because the cops that show up end up arresting Rick. He keeps trying to tell them he's a bounty hunter. He keeps trying to tell them about Harry Bryant. He tries to vid phone call Harry Bryant for them, and they're like, nobody's on the line. I don't know what's going on. The reader at this point is given the impression that maybe Rick Deckard is actually the android, and he's got implanted memories, and everything we read in the first 60 pages of the book is just like an implanted memory and didn't actually happen. And so they go to a version of the Hall of Justice, or the Hall of Freedom, maybe it's called, and it's a version that doesn't exist. Like, for him, he's like, I don't know about this one and they don't know about where I work. And so it's just there's two separate Hall of Freedoms that are happening. He's sent up to a boss's office. The boss's name is Inspector Garland, and he's like, hey, I don't know, this seems weird. You say you're like this bounty hunter. You say you're killing androids, and we're going to find out about that. We're going to check the bone marrow of this Polakov guy that you killed and make sure that he was really an android. And Deckard's like, sure, yeah, check it. Let's see what happens. And then the Inspector Garland's also, it's weird that, okay, looking at this list of androids you're going to retire, I'm on this list. This doesn't really make sense to me. I'm going to call in one of my own bounty hunters, and he's going to figure it out for us. So he calls in his own bounty hunter. His own bounty hunter is called Phil Resch. Phil Resch is just waiting to see what's going on. They're talking to Inspector Garland's, hey, here's what happened. This guy has killed some people. We think that they're people, but he says they're androids. We're waiting on a bone marrow test. I'm on this list. And so Phil Resch is, you're on the list. So he starts to get suspicious of Inspector Garland, who it seemed like maybe he'd been suspicious about before. The bone marrow test comes back. Polakov was an android. Rick Deckard is vindicated. The stuff he says, it starts coming true. So then Phil Resch is like, hey, I'm pretty sure that we should try to figure out if Inspector Garland is an android or not. So this outfit, whatever this alternate Hall of Freedom bounty hunting police officer station, has its own android detection test called the Benelli test. The Benelli test is more of a test of speed of reflexes. How fast do the reactions happen? And so like an android, it happens really fast and they can't artificially slow it down. That is how they determine how someone's an android. They run this test, and the test shows that Inspector Garland is an android, and Inspector Garland is trying to tell Rick Deckard, hey, like, Resch is an android too. And that is like when Phil's out of the room going to get his Benelli test equipment. He's like, hey, Phil Resch is an android also. Maybe I'm an android, but also like Phil Resch is. This whole place is run by androids. The reason you couldn't call out and find out anything about anything is because it's a closed line, a closed circuit. We operate as a closed force. Everyone only interacts with androids here. The other police station, everyone only interacts with humans. So there's basically a whole decoy police station happening in the middle section of the book, where we as a reader, we're thrown like into wondering, what does this mean about Deckard, and what does this mean about the androids that he was trying to kill? But no, Phil Resch determines that Inspector Garland's an android, shoots him, with the laser tube, kills him, calls up Inspector Garland's secretary and says, hold his calls, Inspector Garland's going to be tied up for a little while. Deckard and Resch leave the android Hall of Freedom together in a hover car, and they're going to go talk to Luba Luft now because they're bounty hunters, and Phil Resch is like, yeah, if you're going to help me kill some androids, I'm about that. And Rick Deckard's like, sure, you seem cool. Also, you might be an android, but I'm not going to worry about it until after other androids are retired. So they have a little fast friendship. Deckard and Resch then go to Luba Luft, who's finished performing her show, and they're talking to her, and Rick Deckard is not trying to even kill her. He seems to have a little bit of a crush on her. He buys her a book that he thinks she'll like because she asks him to. She feels like, okay, these two bounty hunters are here to kill me. She decides that it's over for her no matter what she does. There's this futility of existence that like comes over her, and Rick Deckard's thinking about that, being like, okay, this person is different from humans because it just gives up when it knows there's no escape. And humans are people who like will never give up no matter what. Even if there's no chance that they're going to survive, they won't give up. So that's one of the moments he realizes that. They're in an elevator or something, and Resch is going to kill Luba Luft. Deckard's like, don't kill her. Phil Resch is like, fine, I'm not going to kill her. Deckard is like, oh, okay, maybe I'm showing a little too much that I like androids. He goes, fine, kill her then. Before he has a chance to be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I'm joking, Resch kills Luba Luft. Deckard takes the book he just bought for $25 for Luba Luft, and he burns that as well with his own laser tube. Phil's kind of like, hey, it seems like you have an issue with female androids. Those are the ones that you have empathy for whatever reason. And they even validate this by having Deckard do a question or two with the Voigt-Kampff method. His readings are real different for female androids. Resch is like, hey, you know what? Here's how I deal with this. I just sleep with the female androids and then I kill them. And apparently this seems like good advice to Deckard because he's like, sure, the chapter ends there. Now we're back with John Isidore, and John Isidore's living with Pris Stratton, at least temporarily. They're sharing the same space, even though Pris Stratton really doesn't like him. Remember, this is the Rachel Rosen Nexus 6 model. Now, two other androids make an appearance. It's Roy Beatty, and Ermengarde Beatty. And they're a married couple, or they're pretending to be a married couple because they are robots, androids who only have 2 to 4 years of being alive. They're showing up at John Isidore's apartment, and Pris Stratton's there, and they're like ignoring Isidore for a while until they're like, what's up with this Isidore guy? While the 3 androids are reuniting and talking about the situation, which is that 5 of the 8 have now been killed. Trying to figure out, okay, we probably should hole up here. Like, they're deciding whether or not to kill John Isidore, but John Isidore's, he's just hanging out. He's pretty happy that they're there because he just likes to have friends. Even when they're being extremely cruel or mean to him, like Phil Dick says that he's just basking in the warmth of their presence, of just like the presence of having people in his apartment to hang out with. Now we're back with Rick Deckard and Phil Resch, and it turns out that Phil Resch is not an android, okay? They did some of the tests on him. He's not an android. Lucky for him, because if he was an android, he was just going to kill himself by holding his breath. Androids can just hold their breath, and that's what kills them. Something about the vagus nerve. I wasn't really understanding much of this, but maybe it made sense from some contemporary medical knowledge from when the book was created. Maybe it's also true now. I don't know. It's the end of the workday. They stop hanging out. There's no more Phil Resch in this book at this point, aside from when he's mentioned by Rachel Rosen. Later on, Rick Deckard goes home to his wife, Iran. But before he goes home, what does he do? He has to go buy a goat. He has to go buy a goat, which is way more than the $3,000 that he has. So he's got a goat now. Apparently goats smell real bad, except for the female ones, which is what he ends up getting. I don't know if it's a real goat or not. Maybe he got scammed. He said it's like unlikely that he was scammed just because he's paying so much money for it, which it's not a good reason to not think you're getting scammed. But it is what it is. He goes home, he talks to Iran, his wife, and his wife's like, dude, you still have some more androids to kill. This is cool that you got all this money, but now we're in debt again. And also, what if they kill you, the androids, the next time you go out? And he's like, dude, I don't want to finish killing the next 3 androids tonight. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll just do it tomorrow. But Harry Bryant, his boss, is on the phone talking to him, the vid phone, being like, you should probably just kill them tonight. They're not going to expect you if you do it tonight, so it'll probably be easier for you to do it. If you don't do it tonight, you'll probably get killed by them. He's like, I'm so tired, but he's like, fine. Also, Rachel Rosen, the android from the Rosen Corporation, had called him previously and was like, hey, if you need help doing android killing stuff, I can help you, because otherwise they'll probably just kill you. At that point, he was like, no, I'm not going to take your help. You're an android. Screw you. So he said no at that point, but now he's like, maybe I need it now because I'm like super tired and there's 3 left, and the one that I'm scared of is Roy Batty. That's the leader of the group, and he's obviously the one that's going to be the hardest to kill, so I might need help. He calls up Rachel Rosen, and they decide to meet somewhere at some hotel room or something. I think is where they end up, at some hotel room where obviously he ends up following Phil Resch's advice, and they end up doing stuff together. Like, he has sex with a robot at that point. The Rachel Rosen android at this point tells him that she loves him, and that now he won't be able to kill any of the other androids because he has too much empathy for them, which he's starting to feel like this is true, right, about himself. He's like, oh no, like, I do have too much empathy. She tells him, yeah, it happened with every other bounty hunter I slept with. They couldn't kill androids anymore, except for Phil Resch. Like, when I slept with him, like, he kept killing androids because he's a weirdo. And the deal with Phil Resch is apparently that he just likes killing things. Rick Deckard says to him at one point, hey, if you'd have found out that you could kill me, you would have just killed me because you like killing stuff. Phil Resch was like, yeah, so like, I don't care. That's just who I am. He gets pretty mad after Rachel Rosen gives him this info. She also drops another bomb on him at this point, which is that she knows these escaped androids and they like communicate with each other, and they have been planning stuff together. And she was actually, like, when she called to be like, hey, I'll help you, she was actually helping the androids more than she was going to help him. It's not good for him. He's like, okay, well, screw you. I'm going to try to kill you now. She's like, oh no, you're going to kill me. She gets all sad that she's going to die and gives up in the way that the androids give up when they think that they're going to die. And he doesn't kill her. Again, he's like, fine, I'm not going to kill you. And he just leaves her. But he's still going to go try to kill these other androids. Now we're back with John Isidore in the apartment building, and they are so excited to listen to Buster Friendly, all these androids. They're like, oh, Buster Friendly is going to have an announcement tonight. Buster Friendly on the television show is like, hey, so we did a pretty deep investigation into what's going on with this Mercer guy. And it turns out this Mercer person is just like a fake actor who lives in some place in LA, and he's super old now, and he was just doing some project that never got aired, basically. And these are films, like 3D holographic films from that. And when you fuse with Mercer and you're climbing the hill and things are being thrown at you or at him in the source material, it's just like foam rubber stuff. It's not real. Meanwhile, Rick is having a bunch of fusing with Mercer stuff happening at the end of this book. He's fusing with Mercer. John Isidore is fusing with Mercer. A bunch of the end of the book takes place in the sort of like mental space of fusing with Mercer, which is reminiscent of the Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, where it's like a bunch of the book takes place in this like third reality, or second reality even. But I think in that book there are 3 realities. Not to put too fine a point on it, but yeah, so there's a thing that happens that are fusing, and Mercer's appearing to Rick and saying stuff to him like, yeah, you're feeling like pretty empathetic about these robots and about these androids, but it's fine to kill them, and you actually need to kill them, so keep going. So yeah, Rick Deckard's just cool. I'm gonna take what Mercer told me, even though Mercer is like apparently fake. I know though that when I'm fusing with Mercer and I get hit by a rock and stuff, like that stuff feels real to me. The blood is real. All the things are real. Maybe it's not as fake. Or there are aspects of it that it's, even if it was fake at the beginning, it's real now. So the empathy box actually is like what's causing the religion to continue. And I thought that was an interesting, like, even revealing that the source of the religion was fake doesn't do anything. And these androids are like, they're like, oh yeah, Buster Friendly is an android too, and he's been in on this whole thing, and we're gonna all like benefit from the fact that humans have just been told on like the number one most trusted television show that their religion is fake. And I think the narrator or someone is, maybe John Isidore is there just being like, these androids have no idea that's not how it works, and nobody is actually going to care. Like literally no one will care. So it's possible that no one will care, but they're celebrating like it's real. At the same time, so John Isidore sees like a spider. He finds a spider and I found a spider. And this is at the same time that the Buster Friendly announcement is happening. The androids are like, what do you mean you found a spider? And then they just start to torture it and dismantle the spider in front of John Isidore, who's having a panic attack or an anxiety attack at this point about it's like a real animal that he found, a real living animal that exists. And these androids just want to torture it, essentially. They chop its legs off one by one. They set it on fire. John Isidore eventually pulls it from them and takes it to the sink and drowns it, which he's just, I really don't like this. These people are doing this stuff. And he goes somewhere in his head, but it turns out that he's just goes to the empathy box and puts his hands on the empathy box. And then he's talking to Mercer too. And Mercer is, hey, everything's fine. Like, you're doing okay. Look, here's the spider. Mercer gives him a living spider replacement, which when he comes out of the empathy box, he has the spider. Maybe it's a fake spider at that point. But remember that one of Mercer's like previous powers was being able to bring animals back to life. Potentially it's a living spider, like we don't know. He's like, I'm not going to show this spider to the androids because they'll just kill it again. He goes outside to put the spider like on a leaf somewhere. While he's doing that, the Rick Deckard shows up, the bounty hunter, looking for all of the androids who are holed up inside of the apartment building that John Isidore resides in. They have a little brief chat, and Rick Deckard lets him know, like, hey, I know that you know about the androids. Just tell me which apartment they're in, because it's going to be like annoying for me to figure out which apartment is it. And so Isidore's like, no, I'm not going to tell you. Deckard is about to try to get Isidore to tell him, and then is like, he's not going to tell me, I'll just go inside. Isidore knows that the people are androids and he still wants to help them. Deckard goes in, he's like climbing the stairs, and unbeknownst to him, there is a woman who's like trying to kill him, and it's Pris Stratton. She is out of the apartment and she is hiding on the stairs. And he doesn't know that, and he's probably going to die, but he gets a vision from Mercer at that point that says, hey, there's a woman on the stairs trying to kill you. He just is able to survive at that point because of this vision he gets from Mercer. He's able to find the door where the two androids are in there. Ermengarde and Roy Batty are still in the apartment. He gets to the apartment, he knocks on the door, he pretends to be John Isidore with the stutter. He's like, it's me, I'm John. Apparently they're fooled by this, or at least Roy is. But so he opens the door and they're shooting at him with a laser tube. They try to be like, oh no, you got to do the Voigt-Kampff thing on us because you don't know if we're androids or not. He was like, no, you already are shooting at me. I don't think it is super climactic, the fight between these androids. It's not really like in the movie where the last, 10 minutes, Harrison Ford's just running from Rutger Hauer, and then at the end, Rutger Hauer just like dies without Harrison Ford having to do anything. It's not really like that. Rick Deckard kills both of them with his laser tube. He's killed 6 androids in one day. He's the new record holder, and he wants to brag about it. He wants to call up Dave Holden, the guy who was in the hospital from getting shot by Polakov at the beginning of the novel. Wants to call him up and like gloat about it. But the guy is like in dire straits, I guess, at this point. It's only been a day. He's like, no, this guy can't come to the phone. He's still pretty screwed up. But yeah, so that's a funny intuition that Rick Deckard is just like, I'm going to call up my colleague and gloat that I killed all these androids. He goes home and Iran tells him, hey, sorry, the goat is dead. Some lady showed up and pushed the goat off the roof. Obviously, this was Rachel Rosen who did that because she's spurned or scorned or whatever it is. He goes north somewhere into the radiated hills of San Francisco or north of that, or who knows where it is, but he's by himself and he's fusing with Mercer somehow because when he's on a video call with someone from work, they're like, oh, you look kind of like Mercer right now. He's like, oh yeah, I must be fused with him and I might be fused permanently. Who knows? And he's climbing the cliffs and he sees some rock move and it's a toad. He brings the toad home and he's like, Iran, I found this toad. It's my first and only living animal that I found and it makes up for everything. Look at this toad. Iran turns it over and finds the seam where it's got like the battery box or whatever. It's not a real toad. And he's like pretty sad by that too. He's like, man, like none of these, all this stuff that I've done the whole novel to get these animals has not worked out. He's like, I had a sheep, the sheep didn't work. Like he's not thinking about this. I'm just thinking about this as a reader. It's like everything that he did to get the animals didn't work out. Even when he got a real animal, it got pushed off the roof. And then he thought he found another real animal, and that one was a fake animal. And so Rick falls asleep, and the book ends with Iran Deckard on the phone with somebody at the animal shop. She buys some artificial flies for the artificial toad, and that's the book. It's interesting how much of the book is a meditation on being alive versus being artificially alive, real empathy versus fake empathy, real religion versus fake religion, real animals versus fake animals. One of the words that Philip K. Dick really likes is ersatz, which means fake. But yeah, if you are reading Philip K. Dick, you will run into the word ersatz all the time. At this point, I've also finished the Exegesis of Philip K. Dick, in which he had this overpowering thought or feeling that the entire universe was made of information and that we're living in a simulation. And there's an outer part and an inner part. And the outer part is somewhere that we can escape to if we do the right things. And he really wanted this information to get out to everyone. And he thought that the fact that this book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, was being made into a movie, that was the culmination of that information getting out to everyone, is what he thought. I don't know if it really comes through in the movie, but I know that he really thought it did before he died. And this was like the last, like right before he died, he saw the beginning of the Ridley Scott movie. And he thought, oh, they like did everything outside of the animals. They were like, he's like, they don't have any stuff about the animals in it, but they did a really good job with everything else, is how I imagined it. He just wanted or thought that like this completed his life's work. And I think there's something about that when people think that their life's work is completed. Maybe it's like a permission, like they give themselves permission to in some way die. Not that I think that's what happened, but like this is a guy who literally predicted the way in which he would be found, like dead. And he wasn't found dead that way, but he was found in that same position that he predicted. So it was a thing. Yeah. As far as a book goes, how would I rate it? I think it's pretty full of ideas. I think at one point when I was reading it, I told my wife, like, this is mostly dialogue, but like almost every page there's very scant information about where the scene is happening and what the circumstances are, but you also have this like very well drawn backdrop at the beginning. So like all the stuff I was telling you about at the beginning, 2021 San Francisco, after the World War Terminus, the sun doesn't shine on Earth anymore. There's this thin layer of dust everywhere. There's commercials about when it's okay and safe to go outside. Like all of that stuff is the backdrop of how you read everything going forward. And so you don't have to have a whole lot of like continual description of all the things. Like, you have the characters, you see where they're going, you see the situation, and also it's just a comic. Maybe I'm the only one reading it like this, but in my opinion, the main character is not supposed to be some Harrison Ford, like, Blade Runner badass. It's not. He's supposed to be like a second string idiot. Not like an idiot, but somebody who's not the top of the line cop. And the fact that he was able to get the 6 androids in one day had a lot to do with the fact that he got a lot of help from people. Like, he got help from Phil Resch, who killed at least 2 of the androids for him. So he didn't even kill 6 of the androids, right? So, like, he's taking credit for stuff that happened that he didn't even do, which I think is, you're supposed to read this character as he's lucky, he's taking advantage of his situation, he's lying a little bit, he cheats on his wife with a robot, he's got a fake animal, he keeps buying fake animals, buys a real animal finally, but puts his family in debt. He's not a good representation of a hero. It's more of an anti-hero. Also, at the beginning of the book, like, we're with Iran. Like, this is a guy who goes out and kills things, whether or not they're androids or not. Like, we don't really agree with what he's doing. And he doesn't really agree with what he's doing. But then he gets this message from the religious leader that's like, kill them, which was interesting to me. Because it's, yeah, if you're religious and your religion tells you to do a thing, are you going to do the thing? Or are you going to rely on your own ethical and moral positions? And I thought that was a kind of like the thesis of the book. I'm not going to review it, but I will say it's definitely worth reading. And if you read it before you watch the movie, I feel like that's the better way to do it, just so you can appreciate what things in the movie are doing and why. Because I think I've seen bits and pieces of the movie throughout my life, and it never really made sense to me what it was about. And now it does. So I think it's a good way to think about it and look at it. Until next time, I'm Adam Holwerda, and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick does exist.